Welcome, everybody, to It Tastes Different Gaming News. What's on the news today? BioWare, Activision, Dragon Age, people getting kicked out the door. Sorry, leaving. Before we get into it, make sure you hit like, share, subscribe, all the notification buttons, things like that to help keep you up to date with us on what we're talking about in the gaming world, because that's what we love to do. Now, back into the article. The Dragon Age Veilguard director leaves EA after a disappointing attempt at a series revival. Dragon Age The Veilguard has gone down as one of last year's biggest disappointments. Despite anticipated and excitement over BioWare's gaming comeback, the RPG failed to make a splash and failed to live up to the modern standards set by the likes of Cyberpunk 2077 and Baldur's Gate 3. Both amazing games. In the aftermath, it seems the director is set to depart from BioWare, highlighting once again how disappointing the RPG was for EA and BioWare. Why it matters is the director had been part of BioWare for nearly 2 decades, so the departure is nothing short of a huge deal. The information comes from a leak from I'm going to butcher the name, Corin Bush, the director behind BioWare latest RPG. As per the email, the developer is moving on to a different project and will continue to focus on making RPGs. Hopefully better than the Veilguard. While the departure has yet to be officially announced, reliable insider Jeff Grubb, he's all that reliable, has also corroborated the news. In his latest tweet, the insider confirmed Corinne Bush is set to leave BioWare. Moreover, he addressed reports that about BioWare Edmonton potentially being shut down. Grubb states that this is a rumor, may not be true, but we'll have to wait and see. So I did not play the Veilguard. I had some interest in it when it was first announced, but I don't know. The more and more it came out about it, I kind of lost anything for it. So I'm not going to be able to judge the game itself other than what I've heard and what Nick and Pat have told me about, because they have played it. It does concern me. Anything that goes to EA is pretty well going to get butchered eventually, and anybody who goes to work for EA is butchered eventually. So honestly, EA, BioWare, anything that comes from them anymore, you've got to really be cautious. So. But let's jump into Nick here and find out what he thinks about the game and what he thinks about the director leaving. Do you think he's leaving on his own, or do you think somebody is giving him a little box to put all his stuff in so he can relocate? What do you think, bud?
Hard to say, being EA. But it's and Corrine is a girl. By the way, just so you're aware.
Hey, be whatever they want.
I guess so. They could be whatever. But I'm just saying, she's female. But
my apologies.
Anyway, the point is that doesn't really matter. The game itself was, I think, the director's been a part of BioWare for nearly 2 decades. BioWare is not the same company it used to be. These larger companies like EA and Activision and stuff like that seem to want to follow. They always seem to want to, when they're with their games, they always seem to want to follow trends, fads, what's in the news, politics, society, things that are being talked about today, focused on things of that nature, and they incorporate them into whatever they're making for some reason, right? I feel like a lot of games are, especially fantasy games, which is what a Dragon Age game is a fantasy game. We don't want a bunch of we don't need all of that. Like, keep it fantasy, right? Like we play those games to leave that type of world behind so we can play things that are beyond the imagination, right? Where you can do a lot of cool stuff and do things that you couldn't normally do. But when you're sidelined by societal decision making in a game that comes from the real world into your game, that's when you're going to lose a lot of people. I think for Dragon Age, as far as like an action game, it was fine. But as far as a Dragon Age game, it just wasn't there, right? For me or for Pat. And for Pat, it was the most disappointing game of the year for him. Now, it wasn't my most disappointed, but I'm definitely with Pat in saying it was a disappointing game. I beat the game, so did Pat. We both completed it, but after completing it and like looking back at it and things like that, like the game wasn't that great. You know, I thought Inquisition was a lot better, which was the last one. Dragon Age 1 is still my favorite. Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition were way better games. And I think if they would have just stuck with, don't try to bring in these other what's going on now into this fantastical fantasy world, right? The fantasy world is not based in like, oh, this is North America and some state. No, it's like some mythological area. So don't bring in.
Do you
stuff.
think the game was mired or hurt by everybody talking about saying it's woke because they put trans issues in it? They put I think some gay characters, or at least not gay characters, just themes, I guess you want to say. I mean, do you think that's why, or do you think it was overall it was just not a good game?
It just overall wasn't a good game. The writing wasn't good. I don't think it's fine if you want to have those themes, right? If you want to have like, it's fine. Let's put it this way. It's fine if you want to have a gay character or a trans character or any of these types of characters in a game. I don't care personally. I mean, we played a game about that, right? Which we all really liked.
Loved it. Yeah.
But that game we knew what we were getting into with that game, right? That's what the game was about. And so it didn't hide from that, right? But Dragon Age tries to like skirt around things as well as, kind of make it a central part of certain side quests and characters and stuff. And it's like, that's fine if they want to identify or if they're, whatever the case may be, that's fine. But what does this have to do with two gods trying to destroy the world? This has nothing to do with that, right? This is so left field. And it's that type of stuff that it feels like for games like these that don't do, because I don't think Dragon Age the Veilguard did very well for them, is because not necessarily because of, I mean, I'm sure there's probably some people that are bigoted online and things like that. But I think mainly it was like, when you play a Dragon Age or any of these types of games, you want to be brought into this fantasy world, and all the things about the real life are just taken away, right? And it's a focus on the fantasy world and the characters within the fantasy world, and not, because I felt like half the time in the game, I was dealing with everyone's personal grievances about their life and like how they live. Then, I mean, there's two gods trying to destroy the world, and we're worried about like John's penis problem, right? And it's like,
poor John.
Who cares? Like, sorry, John,
world's
but
gonna
this
end, but
this is not important.
Up.
Okay, like I'm sorry, it's just not important. So it's like it's really weird to be talking about this stuff or having these types of discussions in a game that doesn't seem to fit that mold, right? Like, Tell Me Why, which is the one I was talking about. That game was about that, so it was fine. You bring up these subjects. And it's like, okay, well, I knew that's what this game was about. So that's fine if I'm talking about these things or we're exploring this stuff and we're learning about it and things like that. But when it
was two different approaches, though.
Right.
That game was, it wasn't surprise your character's trans or surprise the character's gay. It wasn't a surprise. It was a beautifully written, story driven, family focused.
All right, set in the real world, right?
Yeah, exactly. And when you're in your fake world, you want to be with fake problems.
Right.
I mean, yes, if your character is gay, it's fine as long as it's not pushed and prodded in a way that takes you out of the experience of just living in that world.
Right.
A lot of games, movies, stories, they don't know how to approach those subjects, and I'm
Yes, and
okay with
it's
the
very
subject.
difficult to
It's
do
how it's
that,
approached.
right?
Yeah. Well, part of it is I think we all have a
Everyone has
bigotry
some
in
sort of
some way,
biasy or yeah.
and I don't. It's like when I play a game, I think after all these years, you realized I want to look at a girl. I always make a female character if I have the option. Why? Because I like girls. I like to look at girls. I don't want to see big muscles, swinging a big broadsword between his knees. I want to look at a hot girl. That's just the way I am. That doesn't make me sexist. It doesn't make me homophobe. That's what I want. And if my character, Mass Effect is a great way to describe it. If your characters, you pick male shepherd, female shepherd, you can pursue the others in any way you want, and you don't have to pursue them at all. You don't have to do any of that. It's there, but it's not a direction you're forced and guided. Uh, with that type of fantasy world. So
Right.
I think they need to make sure that when you put a touchy subject, and by all means, you want to put a gay character in your game or movie, you go right ahead.
Right.
Everybody can kiss your ass if they don't like it, but it's how you approach that subject and those characters. That's what makes the difference.
Yeah, and I think in Dragon Age Vanguard, or the Veilguard, I feel like a lot of those things were kind of more forced onto
Mm-hmm.
the player than they were just kind of something there that you could explore,
Yeah.
right, or something like that. It felt like it was more the discussion was more forced on the player, and everything was very like PC and your because even like even your character you couldn't be bad, right? You had the discussion tree like all BioWare games. You had like the
Yep.
the good saying, the middle of the road saying, and the I'm a dick saying. And the I'm a dick saying is like it might say in the words like go to hell, and you click that, but really what your character says is I don't think that would be very good. And you're
I will
like, that's
disagree
not
with you.
at all what I said. I said
Go
go
to
to
hell.
hell is what I said, but you came out with like we're still nice. Like no matter what, we're still nice. Right? You can't be a
Yes.
dick in that game.
Yes.
You can't, so it's like you truly can't be who or what you want to play as right in there, and focus on the things you want to focus on or the subjects you want to focus on. It was kind of like a lot of things were kind of talked about and forced, and I think those types of things, it's like I said, like we said, it's fine if you want to have those things, but there's certain types of games in certain places where those work best, I should
Mm-hmm.
say. And I don't think Dragon Age is one of those, right? I just don't think it's that type of, I mean, if you want to have those types of characters that are that way, gay or trans or whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
But to make a whole like PSA about it, that's just odd in a fantasy game, right?
Yeah. I was watching a bit of an anime kick lately, as you know, and I've been watching several anime, and uh, there was the one I just watched was uh, the a character came out gay, but the way they did it was so disappointing and forced. It was like you didn't have to do that. It's like
Right.
we
That's
got it.
exactly what I'm saying. It like a lot of these things, especially in like Dragon Age Veilguard, seem forced onto the player, right? They weren't just naturally. It wasn't naturally done. It was more like this is what it is, and you're just like, oh, okay. And and in games, movies, or anime, or anything that does that really badly, it just doesn't work for the audience, right? And it doesn't matter the situation. It's kind of like, you know, a lot of people like Last of Us 2, but in Last of Us 2, the way that they portrayed Abby, I, for me, and I know for us, or at least for me and Patrick, and I think you as well, that made us not like Abby as a character, and didn't care to play as Abby when the game wanted us to play as her. And it was the way that the game introduced you to Abby, not just, spoiler alert, killing Joel, but
no,
but it was like, it was just the way that the way they didn't introduce the character good enough that you had like some feeling for the character. So even though she did something you didn't like, you could still kind of see. It was kind of like, just, she did this out of nowhere, even though they kind of gave her a backstory about like, oh, she was the daughter of the doctor that you killed. And it's like, okay, sure, that's a stupid backstory, but
see,
okay.
I agree and disagree with that. So the way her character is brought into the game at the beginning is you're hunting the person that murdered your father.
Yeah.
And, they give you a little back end of it, and they kind of give you some emotional feels. And I understand her feeling of it. I understand what she wants, why she wants. And from that point on, once you get that feeling and understanding, they just turn her into a cunt. Pardon my language, I should have said that.
Right.
They just turn her into such an over evil person.
Right.
That you forget about, her reasoning and understanding her reasoning, that you just loathe it. And I know I'm going to get off topic here, but and then once they commit to once they commit the atrocity of killing Joel, sorry, spoiler alert.
Oh,
you have the gameplay all the way eventually up to her. That is, you have all this gameplay up to her that portrays her as such an evil person. After she does her evil deeds, you forget the reasoning and all that. And then when you're playing her, all this bullshit is just forced upon you to try to flip your script.
Right.
That she wasn't evil, but no, she was evil.
Look, she took this little kid in and she's trying to save him. It's like,
yes,
who gives a crap?
Yes. They try to give it redemption.
They do. Yeah.
When
and
there
it doesn't
was really
work.
no reason for it. Right. And they're really what they could have done with her character, keep her as a playable character, but they should have just left her a miserable, evil, angry person. To me, that was more human than her,
have a spiritual awakening after she kills her dad's killer or whatever.
Yeah, after, all that bullshit.
Right.
They try to force you to think in a different direction in that situation about a person. And it didn't need to be there, because the direction I had of her, I'd rather have kept just an evil bitch, because you understood her story. You understood what she was doing, why she did what she did. That was it. She didn't need redemption. She didn't need, I can be better.
Right.
What she needed was another 12 gauge and just go on her spree of screw this. But anyways, they're getting off subject. They trying to flip narrative.
We're trying to force the player into
the narrative. Yeah. Into a direction that doesn't work in that world.
Right.
It is wrong. It hurts. It hurts what you're trying to do. And that seems to be what you're explaining about Veilguard. They're trying to force you into a direction that doesn't work with the world, work with your characters, work with the mindset that you're trying to be in a game. Because in a game, what do you want to be? Not you.
Right.
You don't want to be thinking about anything other than this fantastical world. I mean, I play Indiana Jones. You know who I am? I'm Indiana frickin' Jones. I don't worry about anything else. That's what I want.
Like in the Dragon Age, you're the Veilguard, right? Like you're putting a team together to fight two gods that are trying to destroy the world. Like, and it's like, why are we worrying about this other crap that we don't need to be worrying about? Like, why are we doing this? And they, plus also, I think the way they didn't help the Veilguard as well is, you know, Tosh is the character in the game that's non-binary, right?
Mhm.
Basically. And, which is fine, but she's also like one of the worst and most annoying characters in that game. Like, you can't feel any sympathy for her. They try to, but it's like you already hate the character because the character's so freaking annoying that you're like, I don't like this character just as them.
Yep.
Right? I don't like them as them, not because of what they are or what they're not. I just don't like them as them. Their personality is annoying and I don't like that character. And then you're like, now feel sorry for them or feel this way for them. And it's like, I can't, because and it's the same approach with the whole, you know, like you were saying with The Last of Us 2, where with the Abby thing, right? You can't give that person redemption or feel differently for that person when you've set them up to be a certain way. You're not, it's going to be very hard to change that. And I think this game, you know, I think they just did that. You know, Baldur's Gate did really good because it kept with the theme, right? It was a medieval theme and it kept with that, and it let you do things within that world, right? And didn't try to force certain narratives on a player.
Yeah, everything.
And I think
everything
games
was
like
an
that
option for you to choose, not to be directed into, not to be forced.
Well, yeah, you know, Dragon Age gave an option for everything, but no matter what you chose, it all went into the same direction.
Yeah.
So
to me, that's not about.
It's not choosing.
That's just about, look, it's the illusion of choice.
Right.
As George Carlin says, when it comes to politicians, you have the illusion of choice, but they know who's going to win already.
Right.
And that's what this is about. They know what direction you're going to be. They know what story you're going to have because they're guiding it. They're forcing it upon you.
Right.
So when they take away the actual options of choice, that's when I really get pissy. It's like, you know, when we play games, you know, what end did you get? What did you get? You know, we talk about it, you know, because you make a choice that's different than mine. You know, sometimes we'll tell each other which option we're going to pick, so the other can just take the opposite, just so we can see the stories. That's what you want out of a game. You want out of a game like this. You want that option of choice. You know, and you know, granted, you can have the choice of pursuing whatever relationship you want or religion or all of that in a game like this. That should be a choice. It's not something that should be forced upon you. Now, granted, I mean, you can say your story could be, you know, somebody killed your husband and kidnapped your child, even though, you know, you're a gay couple. That's fine. You're not forcing the relationship down your throat. You're giving a story. You're giving a guidance. So, you know, the sexuality of it's not being forced upon you. It's just part of the story. But when the sexuality is being put into the story just for that sake of being there and guiding you, just to have that, you know, just to see those options, that's when you lose the fantasy aspect. That's when you're just being told, hey, look at this.
I mean, it was just a lot of dialogue choices too. Like even the romance choices in that game are poorly executed.
I heard that too. I heard you guys complain about that.
It's basically like you choose the heart icon if you want to woo that individual, or you don't. If you don't choose it, then you stay friends. If you choose it, and it even warns you before you're about to choose them to bang. Right. It's like, if you choose this person, this is the one you're going to fuck, basically, is what it says. I mean, in a nutshell. And then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's the one I want to screw. And then the sex scene is like, there's no nudity either. Like they're in there, even though you can, in the character creation, I think you can take their top off and see things like that. But in the game, there's zero, right? And so even in that scene, they have their tops and bottoms on. And then the sex scene is like them kissing a little bit and talking, and then it fades out and back, and then they're just laying in a bed talking, and that's it. Yeah. And it's like, and it's almost like, and that's fine. I don't care if there's sex scenes in games or not, but it's just like, why include it if that's all you're going to do with it?
Yeah.
What was the point of having it? Like, me going after one individual wasn't like I had to find the right like gifts for them or choose the right options. Like, I could fuck it up. It was like, no, choose the heart and you'll always go in that direction.
You can tell when Nick's getting passionate about something because the
I'm just
profanity
saying,
comes
like,
flying.
it's stupid. It's so stupid.
It is
like,
stupid. The problem I have with sexuality in games, be it nudity or showing the act of lovemaking, or as you said, fucking. Sorry, Pat, cut that out. Is the way people react to it. It's like God of War. One of the mini games in the original was brown chicken, brown cow,
right?
And people lost their shit on that. It's here's two polygonal blocky characters. You couldn't tell really what the hell was what. You just had that Cinemax imagination going on. People overreact or underreact to those things. It's when you have the ability. Well, it's Conan, the dong slider.
Yeah.
Did they need it? No. Did you spend apparently they
needed it,
but people overreacted with that.
Right.
If you're so sensitive to anything in sexuality, be it gay characters or sex on screen or just dealing with romance in general in a game, it's just I don't know, the way people react to these things is nuts. If you have the option to woo, as you put earlier, a character, it should be an option. If that's what you want in a game,
and you should be able to screw it up.
And you should be exactly, and you should be able to just skip it if you don't want it.
Right.
Because
which I think you can skip it in Dragon Age. I mean, you could basically not woo anybody.
Because if it contained the story in the wooing, I can understand why it would be more forced upon.
No, the wooing has zero. It doesn't matter.
But exactly. But if it has no bearing, then should it be an option? If you want it to be, should it be forced?
Sure, you could have it as an option, but why even have it there? Like,
it's like Mass Effect. Your character interactions changed when you were wooing other characters, which was cool, but it was never forced.
Right.
But when you did do it, it was gameplay. It was interesting. It was unique. It was different. But I don't want to woo. I don't want my real love life to be in my game.
Well, I'm just saying.
Then I just have to sit and argue with it for 20 fucking minutes.
I'm just saying, like, if a game wants to add something like that, like a relationship or something like that, make it make sense, right? Make it make sense in the game to allow the player to pursue that if they want to. But let's say they do, maybe the story changes a little bit, right? Where the character is more protective of the other individual, and so cutscenes change and various dialogue scenes change because they are in a relationship versus just being part of a crew, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're a part of a crew, you have a certain like coworkers, right? Like if you're coworkers with somebody, you're going to have one type of relationship, but if you're dating that coworker, that relationship's completely different. Right. And so even though you're working together, that's completely different. Right. And you're going to act differently. So, I'm saying, like, if the games are going to do things like this, make it worth the gamer's while to pursue those instead of it just being there for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. Too many things in games are not utilized in the way they should be. I want to have in certain games, I want to have those options of finding or just, sleeping around with everybody or finding that one person that, you want to focus on.
Right.
That's great. As long as the way it works in the gaming world doesn't take away from the gaming world.
Yeah.
And I want that, and I want that option in certain games, and I want it out of other games.
Right. Certain
Rainbow
games just don't
Six.
need it, right? They
Yeah,
don't. It
Rainbow
doesn't
Six. I
require it.
don't need to find a character I want to make love to. I want to shoot everything.
Right.
You know, it's Dragon
Make it
Age.
make sense in your world
Yes.
to have this type of stuff. In Dragon Age, it makes sense to have relationship, but if the relationship is meaningless,
Yeah.
once
If
you've
whatever
established
you
it,
say and do doesn't change,
doesn't
anything,
matter, then it doesn't matter having it, right?
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, this was definitely Dragon Age. The Veilguard is probably is definitely, it's not probably, it is definitely the worst one of the Dragon Age games.
But all the reviews were the same when they came out. Back to form.
They were back to form. I don't know whose form, but it was back to somebody's form.
Yeah, I think it was Mr. Hinky's form.
It wasn't back to Dragon Age form. I don't know what Dragon Age game they're playing, but they haven't played that one before, or they haven't played the originals.
No. Anyways, we got a little off topic, but Dragon Age did disappoint many gamers. Even though I think one of the big problems is those reviews. I think when those reviews came out and they were all
basically
identical,
written the same exact way.
I think that threw a lot of gamers off because they knew there was some BS happening with it.
Right.
And, that falls directly on EA and BioWare.
I think
because those review copies came with a special note.
Oh, for sure. Because they were all almost written the exact same way. I think that if that wasn't the case, Dragon Age Veilguard probably would have gotten like 6s across the board for most companies.
Yeah, unfortunately, it went from back to farm to out the door because it bombed.
But for Corrine, I hope things work out better and they find some other form of work somewhere doing something. I don't know.
Well, one thing I think we can both agree on when it comes to EA, I think they have too much input into what happens with the games. Yeah. And I'd say they probably made a lot of choices that reflected poorly into this game. Trying to force certain narratives and ideals, and and when you buy a company, a game company, you should. Don't get me wrong, you can't just let them run free willy out there, but you got to give them their space and let them do the thing. That's why you bought them, because they were good.
Yeah, but EA is bad about that.
They're horrible about it. I mean, they try to shove a loot box in a title block. So they're just
in the start menu.
Yeah. Hit start $1.
$1.
It's
they're just destroying all the IPs they bought, right?
Yeah, and they're not just destroying them; they're letting them rot. So, we'll do a whole episode about EA and
even though we haven't, not like we haven't talked about how bad EA is before, but
we'll do
we'll do it again.
Whole EA eats ass show. So, but anyways, you got anything else before we get on even more of a kick here?
No.
All right. Well, if you made it to the end, and I really hope you did, and you enjoyed this power hour of complaints about sex in video games and the lack there we have in the real world, make sure you hit notifications and subscription, all those good things. Hit those bells. We really like the feedback. We've got some really good stuff here lately on some of our stuff. Nick has been dropping some really good videos about Pantheon. So definitely go check those out. He's getting some wonderful questions and comments in there. He's even got a few buttholes trying to be funny. Check those comments out too. Let them know what you think. But until next time, see ya.